Hello, everyone. It is time for the Culture and Astrology Show. I know you've been waiting all week. We're here with Ricky, per usual, and a good friend of mine, Groshon Erickson. Groshon, how long have we known each other?
Oh man, I don't know, since or like just past, I don't know, 2005 maybe, 2006?
Before the child was born, wasn't
Before
it?
the child. Yeah, you were with child basically when we were becoming friends.
Okay, so more than
So,
17 years. So that's a
yeah.
long time. I brought this book today, DJing for Dummies, because Roshan is a DJ and a musician and an artist. And I thought today we could talk about astrology in art culture we could do versus athletics culture, like art, athletics. How is it used in each culture? Or we could just focus on art. I mean, we can kind of talk about whatever comes up naturally. But how long have you been an artist, Grosh?
Oh, well, my whole life, but I just didn't know it until about the late 90s probably. Well, I knew it in high school, so like I don't know, let's just say 97.
Mhm.
Let's just say I'm an artist since then.
You went to
That's
art school.
I went to art school, so I enrolled in PNCA in 1997 and then started in 98.
Yeah.
That's where I met Scott, and that's how I met you. But I
Okay.
knew I was an artist then. And then I doubted it because I was around artists and built some imposter syndrome because they were very good artists, and I questioned my artistic acumen. But that's over with.
Hmm. What was your major in college?
Photography.
Okay, your photography. Okay. Um, so Scott is my baby daddy, Ricky. So I know Gershon through my baby daddy. Okay. So now what is your interest in astrology? Like how do you use it? What is
Well, I feel like I've always been intuitively in touch with it, but once I started talking with you, then I became aware of like the information that was available through reading your entire chart. And, I wasn't just a sun sign, and that made a lot of sense because that's confusing when you think you're just a Taurus, right? And then gleaning the information as far as like scheduling, when it would be good to create, when it's good to like rest, rejuvenate, and, validate how I felt. Like if I feel tired, then I need, that's because I'm in a transit that needs rest, right? And that gave it a lot of validity to how I was feeling and when to schedule things and when it would be good to perform or I'm attracting people you know, that is a valuable information to somebody doing what I do. And it made a lot more sense once you were reading my like full chart, which I still don't really know how to do.
hmm Yeah. So I do want to kind of compare art culture versus like athletics culture, which I feel like are very different cultures of people. And it's like, so have you guys ever heard of cloud bursting? Okay,
I'm
this
not
is okay. So my producer talks about cloud bursting a lot, where it's when artists burst. And so a lot of times what producers are dealing with is they want an artist to burst or express themselves, but they'll put them in the studio and then they're like, I'm not feeling it, I have a cold, I'm sick, and the artist won't burst. And so, as an astrologer, I'm just like, well, you're wasting money. We could be timing that for you. Like we can time bursts, but I'm wondering in athletics culture. Is there an equivalent of like when will someone be popping? Like, is there a game where a certain person on the team will be more? Is there verbiage for people popping and not popping?
Uh, you mean just verbiage in the culture?
Yeah.
People might say poppin', or they a breakout. They say someone had a breakout year. That's the term.
Hmm. So it's like
A
a whole.
breakout year or a breakout performance.
Okay, interesting. Breakout. I'm going to write that down. So, Groshan, what language do you use to say when an artist is really creating, or how do you talk about that?
I mean, they're on fire, and they're just on one, and they're in the moment. I think a lot of times there's like, the confluence of life events can kind of interfere in performing, I would imagine, as an artist or an athlete. And sometimes you're feeling really good as a human, and then you can perform at your best. But I would say, as for verbiage, I would just say on fire, or they're just, that's what I would say now.
Okay,
uh,
on fire.
I think in sports we would say someone is in the zone or someone is on
in the
fire.
zone, in the
Yeah,
zone, for
yeah,
sure.
in the zone on fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like I had a 5.5 hour set Saturday night, and I was supposed to be two, and I went for longer, and I was in the zone, and I wasn't going to leave it. And there's like, I didn't even have to take a leak, and I didn't want to stop, and I was just on automatic, and everything was easy. And that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you go up there and it's just a grind, and you have to rely on your like preparation and skill. And that is not the zone. But Ricky, that's totally right.
Yeah, that's football too.
Really.
That's yeah.
So a lot of games in football, you're just kind of going through the motions, and then sometimes you're really feeling it.
Yeah. But that's why I think that's why we practice so much so that we can go through the motions and we're still efficient. And we're not going to make huge plays. We might get lucky, but we're not going to do anything extra special, but we'll do our job. And I think that's the minimum in football is do your job.
Hmm.
I would imagine that like when you're in the zone in combination with all the preparation, that's the magic spot where it's all easy.
I don't know if yeah, I don't know if you can really get in the zone and maintain the zone without the preparation.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
No way.
I mean, some guys might be in one game where they had a good week of preparation, but if they don't have a habit of preparation, I think it's difficult to consistently get into the zone.
For
So
sure.
there's this Greek word melatao, which means to train your body for that which it was made. So,
Hmm.
and they say if you do melatao, you will be busy and zealous. So, for example, if Groshon's made for art or made for DJing, he trains, whatever a transit comes through and he feels the impetus to do this and he trains and trains and trains. Then when or like, or even if, let's say he trains when he doesn't feel like it, right? He's still training his body with all the technicals. And then when he is in the zone or when the transit hits, he's just going to be just off the chain and like in football those guys are built for football, but then they have to train at what they're built for, and that's how you achieve excellence.
Yeah. Can you share that with me? Because that what you that word, that's exactly the way I think about astrology, and to me, the optimal way to use it is and how I would apply it. I don't know if this applies to music, but how it would apply to sports is that for us, we don't have the advantage of saying a transit or a progression because we play every Thursday or Sunday or Monday. And so it's like based on whatever's being activated in the chart, how do I find that sweet spot?
Hmm.
And I think the more flexible someone is, I think of versatility in a football player is some games, a lot of running. I'm going to run the ball a lot. Other games are going to pass a lot, so I have to be able to catch the ball. Another game, they're going to blitz a lot, so I have to be able to pass protect. And if I know how to find that channel and tune in, then I can be in a zone in my pass protection, in my route running, and that I can if I know the channel to turn to. And that's if I went back in time and I was using astrology in games, is I would see what do I have access to today, and let me focus and channel my gameplay in that direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, to like to correlate that to music, and in that sense, I need to know when it's time for me to perform, which is choosing records and timing there. But sometimes that's not right. So I just need to curate a lineup with good DJs that are on, and like project them. And it's the same thing as choosing records, sort of, except for, you have to trust them. But like, if the timing's off for me, and I've forced it before where I just like I want it or I'm hungry and I'm flexing and it's the wrong time and it doesn't go well because you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And so now with astrology and that information, I know when not to force it and use other tools that I have in the bag.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems like when we take, an impetus that we have naturally and we concretize it into a system, like now you have a system of playing games every 5 days a week, or let's say we systematized your art and we said you have to DJ 5 days a week, right? Now that's a different DJ, right? Now you're DJing at a club, you kind of feel nonplussed about it. You're like, it's your job, it's your job. So there is something in the culture of art where you wait for that inspiration and then you really like let's say you were live streaming on Twitch or something like that. You might wait until you're inspired and then all of a sudden you're DJing and it's like this inspiration wave. That's more like organic art as opposed to being a DJ at a club where it becomes a system.
Right.
So what's the equivalent of that in football? I mean, I guess people who just play pickup games.
Well, we practice all the time.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, it's we get 1 day off a week.
Okay.
And the rest of the time, we we get 1 day off of practice, and then another day we just run, lift weights, and watch film. But we're pretty much always in recover or preparation mode. So it's extremely systematic.
Do you covet that, Groshon, of your life as an artist becoming systematic like that? Or is the culture of art to be more loosey-goosey? And I feel like artists want to have this coveted life of like doing things when they feel like it all the time.
Yeah, no, that's an important topic. Like in any form of art, you've got to be disciplined and sacrosanct about your time and doing it when you don't feel like it. And I've spent a good portion of my life waiting to make stuff when I feel like it. And really, you're just not building your skill set. You're not prolific. And if you just have a schedule and you do it regularly, when you feel like it, when that coincides with continuing to grind it out, like practice like Ricky would on the football field, then it's working. But if you just abandon it and only pick it up when you feel like it, then you're just a hobbyist, basically, right?
Interesting. So maybe the culture of like being pro, like if you're pro at football, then you do it, you practice and it becomes a system. If you're pro as an artist, you make a system of it, and then otherwise
Like producing
you're
music, the good producers don't just make music when they feel like it. They work on it and they have time during the day and they, prepare. And with anything, if you only do it when you feel like it, then you're just kind of at the whim of life and seems kind of attention deficit situation of brewing, right?
yeah. Well,
Wow. This is well, I just want to say this is looking at the chart. To me, the chart has entered the room. And the word professional. And I think the way we're using it, we're talking about Saturn. Time, right? Just the words, right? There's very much Saturn words, and Saturn in the sixth house in Cancer, squaring Venus, the goddess patron of the arts.
well, okay. So just speaking to the time issue, I know this is kind of a weird episode for us, Ricky, but I do want to keep grinding away at this because do think there's interesting parallels here. So there are two clocks. There's the quantitative clock and there's the qualitative clock, right? The quantitative clock said that we all have to meet here at 2 p.m. That counts time in numbers. And then the astrological clock is a clock with 10 hands that looks at the quality of time, right? And so I think there could be some culture we develop where we time our expression to that qualitative clock where we say we're going to take a pro level look at our manias and we're going to like we could go into your chart, Ricky, for the next year and say every time you have a transit of that Mars, Venus, and Aries, we're going to have you do some football. And even though you're kind of beyond football, but we could say your Melatao would train for football on these certain transits, right? And for Groshon, we could say when
Why
when
can't I just have sex?
That is training for football. No, just kidding.
Oh,
I
perfect.
love how you say doing football.
Rather do something else, do someone
Yeah,
else.
right.
Fine, you can have some sex. Fine.
Every
I'll
time,
let
yes.
you.
Every time it's activated, I need deep penetration. I need
Yeah.
deep, loving, passionate penetration.
If you can find that moment in my chart, please let me know.
Mars and Cancer. He's got Mars and Cancer. Sorry. Yeah. Mars jokes. Anyway, so no, but about that, but I do think that, do you guys get what I'm saying is that you can actually flip it and you can go timing from the qualitative clock first, and you can say, I'm going to religiously live out my transits like a pro, and like every day, what is my transit? What's my transit today? And you kind of you become a pro at living out your transits. And like, where's that culture? I want to live in that culture.
I feel like I sort of do that. I mean, that's what I created. That's what I created Leela for. And I think at the minimum, living out is really just thinking about it. I'm telling you, my son, my 4-year-old son, Mars is the strongest planet, and he knows it, right? And there's something about us being able when Mars is up, there's something about us being able to talk about it, and he can understand it, where it turns into a smile, right? And he takes more pride in it. And so I mean, I think we are moving. I know we are moving towards a world where that's how people are living. I mean, if you think of taking this idea and you have a young child and you have a sense of what this child is built, what this chart is built for, and you have access to the child's transits and progressions, talk about a curriculum or a lesson plan, right? I think it's a way to improve education on all levels.
Hmm.
Because I think of the planets as like antenna, you know, and when they're being activated by transit or progression, is that antenna becomes more powerful, right? So it's able to be more efficient. It's able to do more work. And if we're conscious of the work that we want to do, efficiency in life will go way up because
Yeah.
we won't be so much. I mean, sometimes we like to swim upstream because it's fun, but we won't be so much unconsciously swimming upstream.
Right.
Well, the ancients actually said that the reason to learn to mirror your intelligent mind to your heart mind, what is my heart going to feel like doing? And then we plan for that is because you start flying. And like people always say like when I retire, I'll do what I feel like doing. It's like I started doing that 10 years ago. Now
Right.
I monetize it all. It's like but I mean, yeah, I hear you, Ricky, and I think that is the way that is what astrology was for in some ways, you know. Okay, I mean, I need to change the subject. Let's
Wait,
talk. Okay.
on
Okay.
that note, real quick, like without the information that you guys have as, being able to read this information, I've just been sensing like the right path of least resistance, but following my gut. And as I do that, I used to just grind it out with my mind and things didn't go well. And I've been on a path of least resistance, not easy, but like going with my internal guide, and it's life is just awesome. Like it couldn't be more awesome for me. And maybe there's a world where I'm able to like read the chart cerebrally, but I feel like that makes sense with efficiency to me.
Yeah, and in reading a chart, it's really learning a language because what you just described to me is textbook Taurus. And when I'm talking about a sign, I associate signs with attitudes and motivations. And the attitude or motivation that I associate with Taurus is really about calming down and learning to trust the gut. And the connection between the two, when the mind is active, right? The mind is so active, we're so distracted, is that we can't even hear the gut. You know? And also something about Taurus that's a lot of times associated with pleasure. But I think pleasure associated with the body, I think the point of this is really to have a good relationship with the body so it becomes easier to trust what it's telling you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely, and not like get indulgent with the pleasure because I'm so sensory oriented, but use that information also to help other people and myself because I'm listening to my heart, which is the guide.
Yeah.
But for sure, and there was a time, growing up and learning how to be who I am now that's like can just indulge in the senses because it's so pleasurable.
Yeah.
But that sensitivity also comes with a downside, and I have to learn how to like tune stuff out. And that can lead you down if you're trying to tune too much out. That's problematic too.
Yeah, definitely can be problematic. Yeah. Mm. So, in astrology, I mean, I find myself as an astrologer in the course of a week using the word sensitive probably 30 times.
Yeah.
And almost each time I'm using it in a different way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
Well,
yeah, because to me, sensitivity can show up multiple ways in a chart.
you're making Ricky kind of sensitive today. This is cool. I've never seen him this sensitive.
Well, it's good.
He's okay. So
Well, it's different. I think when you bring yeah when
I've
you
heard
bring
Ricky be sensitive.
yeah when you bring men on, it's easy to be sensitive. But some of these women, oh
more
my
men in the monitor.
God.
Yeah, Ricky's got Jupiter going on his moon in Cancer right now. He's really sensitive right now. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to change the subject actually, which is let's talk about artistic chemistry and and the astrological look into that. Okay, so because a lot of art culture focuses on collaboration.
Yeah.
you know and I don't know what this looks like in football. Like maybe we look at chemistry between a quarterback and the a wide receiver. Is that who receives the quarterback's throw? So doing too bad. Okay. So but basically I didn't say tight end. Okay, but basically it's like there's chemistry in these things. And so let's look at the astrological part in looking at chemistry. Would you think of that as an artist?
What do I think of that?
Yeah, like would you ever think
Oh,
look at you and another artist
stuff
chart
I
to
would
see if
say like in Ricky's sense, like a running back and like I don't know, a guard, but that probably has to be some pretty good chemistry. But who I'm working with, especially setting up the events, like what's my intents? Because I'm not just a DJ, but I curate events, right? And that compatibility is important mostly with intent, how you speak to each other, how you communicate, how compatible you are as far as like your skill set. You don't want to be offering just the same things, but you have to understand each other. I mean, that's how. And does it sing? Is it harmonic when you're working together, or are you playing the same note? Basically. And it could be visual art or music, either way. But there has to be a deep understanding of where the other person's coming from, but that level of compatibility of offering something else. But intent is super important. Like people do stuff for different reasons. The ego can get involved, which is problematic and all sorts of things when it comes to working with other people.
Interesting.
But I think of Fleetwood Mac, right? It's because behind the scenes they had a lot of interpersonal stuff they were sleeping with. It was crazy. But out of that, they made really amazing music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so in football, yeah, you can argue chemistry between a quarterback and a receiver is important, but I think two things that stand out to me as more important. One is the chemistry between a player and the play caller.
Mm.
Because in football, we spend a lot of time in preparation. The coaches spend a lot of time coming up with a game plan, having an idea of how they want to attack the opponent and what tools, what chess pieces they want to use to attack that opponent. And so if there's chemistry between the people that are creating the game plan and the people who are asked to execute the game plan, right, that's where the beauty is. And also, and related to this, I think the chemistry and I feel like a team is very much in astrology is an 11th house situation. And so the chemistry is more about the chemistry of the team. Can the team all buy into the same goal? And if you have that, it really corrects for any kind of that corrects any other kind of more interpersonal or intimate chemistries usually.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think a team environment's a lot different than a one-on-one connection. I do have something to say about this. Like in the artistic world that I live in, we work from alchemy first all the time. We always check composite charts and synastries before collaborating with an artist because we want to know, is that collaboration going to be fruitful alchemically? Is the crowd going to like the pairing? With a good composite chart, the crowd loves the duo. If it's a bad composite chart, they don't look good together, they don't vibe, there's something that the communication doesn't flow, like whatever it is. And so I think in the astrology culture, which I guess we can bring into this episode, I think we we say composite first and then you look for intent second, then you look for all these things. But that's kind of an astrological extremist view.
Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, I have a couple of I have a couple of objections to that view, of
Let's
course,
hear
of
your
course.
objections.
I mean, I have to say it like that, but no, but seriously, I kind of agree. But I was reading something a friend shared a quote from a book, and he was of an Indian philosopher, and he was talking about Leela, the divine play. In paraphrasing, he said, "It's not really if you're good or you're bad; it's how well do you play the part." And so I think if you have a difficult composite chart, it means it might be more difficult to make that look pretty. But for me, it's hard for me to say that it's not possible.
Hmm.
It just might be harder. I think let's just take tag teaming for DJs as an example. I mean, from my angle, it's like trial by error. Like I have somebody that I might think, hey, let's play ones and it's going to be awesome. And it's all right. But then when you find the right match, like you look like something happens when you're looking at them, and then when you're listening to them play ones, which is like one record, one record, one record. And I play well with others, but I've got a buddy that something happens when we play together and it's magic and the music is awesome and we're really cool to look at. Like he's really tall and I'm short, but our personal chemistry is very comfortable. We're best buds, but it's complementary in a way that like creates something very different than when we're alone. And I think that resonates. Now, that's not to say I can't play with other people and make it sound good, but it's just not as magic. And yeah, we have to figure out, it's a little bit harder to figure out how do we complement each other than when it's just an easy. And I'm guessing if you looked at our chart, it would be pretty compatible.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, I think you can do these things without the astrology. Like I like what you said. You do like like I've learned to work with people one project at a time. Like, well, let's try one video together, see how it goes, and then how's the chemistry, how's the intent, do you show up on time, all these things. And then if it goes well, then we do another episode and another episode. But I do think when we look at commitment, long-term commitment, projects, I absolutely would not write a book with somebody if we had a bad composite chart because a book goes on for years, sometimes 15 years. I mean, Judith Hill and I wrote a book together, and we have a beautiful composite chart, but our natals fight, like our Marses are square, and we'd be on the phone like fighting. We'd be like, "Oh shit, Mars is at 28 degree," and but like the book we made is like, "What?" Because the composite is so good. So I always am doing those calculations, and I've been doing that for about 15 years, and the crowd just loves good composites. Like the crowd just loves them. I mean, I would.
And I
Why
would
would you
imagine
waste
you
an
guys,
artist on a bad composite?
isn't there a lot of timing though in that composite chart too?
Well, the composite
Mm.
chart, well, I'm not afraid. The composite chart, not real. I mean, you can look at transits to composite, but the composite is like, what do you meld into over time? Like people meld into one book, or if you made an album with some Groshong, it's like then you're melding into this thing, and the composite is like, what is the energy of this thing, right? But the timing of the synastry is like we time all projects here to the charts too. Like we did, we will burst on things per the transit. Like we do that all the time too, but. Yeah, this is high level mathematics over here, but I do think I just think I love to hear your non-astrological take on a similar thing because collaborating is huge in art.
Well, for instance, I mean, I don't. you know, it seems pertinent to tell this story now. Years ago, I was dating one of my partners now in my music collective. She's a DJ, and our collective throws events. And we're no longer together intimately, but we were at the time. And I had our composite chart done, and you know, helped me understand that as a romance, it might be really hot for the meantime, but it's going to flame out. However, we're supposed to do something really cool together and it's going to be awesome. And at the time, I didn't understand what that would be. And then recently, I mean, like we do awesome shit together and we're the closest friends. And when we collaborate musically or producing events, it's so cool. But like you could see that in our charts, and that was probably tw 2011, I think.
Hmm.
It makes total sense now, but at the time I was like, okay, well, that's valuable information. And that helped me know that I was like supposed to keep continuing this relationship because something was going to come of it because I we could have both abandoned it.
Hmm.
I don't know how that fits into the conversation, but it seems like it did.
That's a
Well,
good.
it definitely fits, and it comes back to my point, and I hope I'm trying to straddle the line because I do believe that you can see certain configurations, and the feeling you get is this is going to be difficult,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean bad,
right.
you know? Or I should say, it only means bad for people who don't have the motivation to put in the effort.
And
And
I think that I feel like that absolutism is how that like I think Ricky, where you're coming from is important because people that don't really believe in astrology or are willing to give it a chance, they just want to think of it as this preordained destiny when really it's not. It's just information. And you can use it how you will. But I think to abandon a relationship just because your composite chart isn't perfect might be a mistake.
well, what I would say is to keep trying in a composite chart with the fantasy that it's going to be easy with a difficult composite chart. That's a huge mistake.
Makes
You
sense.
know, it's like if you know that you're climbing Mount Everest, right? You probably train a little bit and you know it's going to be difficult. So when it's difficult, right, you remember why you're doing it, you get a second wind and you keep on going. And I think, right, but if there is a difficult composite, I better have a damn compelling reason why
Yeah.
I'm going to stick in, and hopefully the partner shares that. So we're doing what effort is together. So I think if you have one person in astrology, the other person isn't, and you can see how difficult this composite chart is, and you try to communicate with that other person, and they don't get it, they just want it to be how it's supposed to be. Ooh, to me, then you probably should get out of that relationship.
That's a danger zone. It can get diffused.
Yes.
Well, and I guess that brings us to another question about this alchemy thing in the different cultures here. So, how does football culture deal with two people on a team who just don't get along? And then how does the art world deal with that?
Well, in football, like I said, is the hope is that the group environment, overrides the personal interaction. And I think it's like the military code, right? Because what we're doing is very difficult. Leave your shit at home, right? Put it aside. Come to work. We do a job, right? And that's what's most important. And that's how they handle it.
Yeah, I mean, in art collectives, it's the same thing. A lot of times you'll get, two parts, and they're like, I don't get each other. But then the in-between people are like the glue, and they have to be like, hey, good friend, trust this guy or trust this person. We need to work with them. But as individuals in a vacuum, they might have some sort of weird friction, and that continues, but the team is what connects them together.
Mm. Well, and I think in the art community, so at least I'm old and I'm a producer, so I deal with a lot of artists, right? And being difficult is part of being a good artist. I think in art community, like you're so autistic as to be like almost impossible. Like so it's like I'm always dealing with people who have to like some people have to be 2 minutes late and some people have to do this and some people have to do like it's like everyone's got their thing, you know? So I feel like in the art community being a little difficult is like part of the appeal of a good artist. I mean, like who is it? Like Guns N' Roses, the guy had Axl Rose would show up like 2 to 3 hours late to things, but it's like he's like, but I'm Axl Rose and like I'm irreplaceable. And so I think that could be part of the act of artists is being a little bit like special.
Well, football players are the same way, I would imagine. Like,
I mean, we're not the same way. Like we can't be a minute late to practice, but if it's something that's not related to football, yeah, we're probably gonna. Yeah, we are like that. We have a reputation for it.
Yeah, I think that's like the infinitely special thing that happens with fame. You know, it's like it's like I had a talk with one of the famous artists I worked with the other day, and I was like, yeah, well, that was when you fame flexed. And I was like,
Yeah.
they're like, what's that? I was like, that's when you get away from with something because you're famous. You know, it's like there's also that too. But I don't know. So I think in art having an exceptionally unique chart is very good for an artist, right? Like with really unique aspects of personality and a weird way of talking, and I think uniqueness in a chart is really a thing. That's
I
probably
think,
true in football too.
Uh, I mean, it depends how we're using it. I think uniqueness. To me, I go back to efficiency. you know and there's certain people and that their chart is not very interesting, but they are solid, right? They're dependable. They hit the nail on the head because the energy's not spread out everywhere, right? They're good. And again, someone might say it's boring, but there's the art, okay, is in the consistency, right? There's something calming about it. Like very Taurus. Okay? And then I think of an athlete who's really interesting, right? It's like the energy is spread so many different places. It's hard to be focused and be dependable. And I think the sweet spot is you find that one point of focus that is the main point of creation of the art, and you allow the other places to roam freely, and they all can channel through the art. And I think in football, because you peak in your early 30s, it's hard. I don't think there's enough time and experience unless you're one of the rare players that get to play for a long time. But even then, you're playing with young people, so your development starts to slow down as you get older and older. So it's difficult, and at least when I was coming up, if you were a different, interesting, unique football player, you were considered a distraction.
yeah. You were considered a distraction, right?
That's what I was thinking. I was
Uh-huh.
like, you're totally an artist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I think you're an artist because of your super unique, just your whole storyline has been really unique. And even the picture that we showed, I'll show the people watching. Like this actual ad you did is very, I think, pushing the
Magazine
boundaries.
cover. Yeah.
Or it's a magazine cover. There's Ricky. That's being super arty in as far as just pushing the boundaries of life and thinking and being an astrologer is kind of unique and especially in the realm of football. So
Well, and with that, it seemed like you were honest about, the use of cannabis, which is important in athletics. And at that time, it was really pushed back on. And, I'm a huge supporter of cannabis and come from that industry. And, being outspoken then, and you can talk about it, but I perceived it as like very courageous, and necessary. But I would imagine you got a lot of pushback, huh?
Yeah, but also I felt as a football player, and an artist, that my artistry was on the field, but I think in order to appreciate that artistry, someone had to be a connoisseur. And so the way I viewed my artistry was as a famous person, you know, and it was, again, I was young, so I was trying to figure out my stroke, how to do it. And I thought once I become famous, when I made it to the NFL, and that was my rookie year, is that I have the idea to I really am. Yeah. And to me, the word art, it can mean a whole lot of things, but I think one of the definitions of art is that I like is leaving evidence of what's in here with the world, you know? And I think part of it is being in contact with what's here, but also having some skill and courage to be able to express it. And that was my process. And I think a lot of my artistry on the field, off the field, I have Venus conjunct Mars, is connected to courage. Uh, and I think the full expression of beauty to me, there's always going to be some fire, some passion, and the need for courage.
Hmm.
That's important.
All right. Well, sorry. Okay, I don't want to cut you guys off, but I do want to keep turning around on this topic. Okay, so let's talk about zeitgeist. Okay. So, whoa, I got a Groshong to smile here. Wasn't too boring, although consistent. Okay, so zeitgeist is looking at, the kind of zhuzh of a certain time period, or, it's like, it's what is the feeling of a certain time period. And artists deal a lot with zeitgeist. Do we want to speak to that at all?
Well,
Well, what I would, sorry, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I just was going to say the feeling, yes. Yeah, I think that's an apt way to describe it. But I'd also throw in the purpose of the time. Because to
Interesting.
me, in my mind, I always connect feeling to a purpose, unless feelings are meaningless. Is at the very least, emotions, feelings, they can motivate action or deep reflection.
Yeah.
So, and those can always be used for a purpose. And I do think humanity, countries, groups are evolving too. And that evolution is always going to be fueled by what we're sensitive to, what we're feeling, what we're picking up on.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of picking up on, I mean, there's the idea that artists are antennas and ideas have a life of their own. And Rick Rubin talks about this in The Creative Act, that book, where it's like that idea is going to find a vessel. And if you don't, you can hear it as an artist, and if you don't make something of it, it's just going to find another vessel. And I think in the zeitgeist, that's what's happening. And I used to struggle a lot with like, oh, this person did this thing that I had that idea like a year ago, but I didn't do anything about it. And it just found something else. And I think artists are those sensitive people that are supposed to like produce that into something. And that's some part of what's happening there. And those ideas are supposed to come into creation at a certain time because they're necessary to relay that message. And that timing is it's pertinent, and it has a life of its own. And so that's kind of what throws everybody into something called the zeitgeist as far as I think about it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, it does make sense, especially coming from you. In Andy, in this context, I feel very much Neptune. Someone who has Neptune in the 10th. I think of someone who could be very sensitive to the zeitgeist, and especially the way you described it, because I think of Neptune, and I think of artists. Again, people think of is Venus the goddess of art, love, music, beauty, and what I've noticed is I think a lot of times, yes, kinda, but the way I think in astrology is Neptune is the higher octave of Venus. So I see a lot of artistry expressing through Neptune. And again, there's different, when we say artist, we mean different things. When we say art, we mean different things. But specifically Neptune's job, right? Neptune is the imaginal realm, right? It's where possibilities exist. And not all possibilities become the future, but all futures come from possibilities. And so Neptune, people who have Neptune prominent in their chart, they have powerful imaginations. They're visionaries, meaning they have the ability to perceive the possibilities, but they're just floating up here. In order to make them real, we have to have some skill, right? We have to have some rootedness, some groundedness to take those concepts and ideas and make them real. And it speaks powerfully to your chart that this natural sensitivity to ideas that are floating around. and require people to grasp them and then bring them down to the earthly plane.
And I think speaking since I'm apparently the astrological extremist on this episode, which is that from that view that the artists, I love that you're saying they're antennas because they're picking up on the outer planetary changes that we have these generational outer planets, the slow movers like Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus move slowly. And there have been a lot of talks, like Nick Dagan Best talks a lot about Neptune changing signs and the zeitgeist of the time, the music changes, the art changes, and all this kind of stuff. So the reason that one artist picks up the same concept over here as the other one over here is because those outer planets are affecting the artists and their antennas are all tweaked at the same time. And it comes from a body system. Like Pluto in Aquarius is hitting the electrical air system of humanity in a certain way so that we're all feeling the AI thing, for example. And that's because of how our bodies are picking up energy right now. Yeah, I think art is an expression of the zeitgeist. It isn't a drawing down of those astrological influences. And so in that way, the best astrologers are artists in some ways or vice versa. So let's talk about football there. Is there a generational expression of the football theme? Like, how does the zeitgeist affect football?
That's a really good question. Um, I feel like it's almost zeitgeist resistant.
I mean, but
Yeah,
isn't there like trendy? It seems like
100%. There
there's these
are
waves of the way to play football or basketball, and everybody's doing it. And
yeah,
then all of a sudden, somebody finds a different way or an older way, and then it just kind of everybody's doing that again.
yeah. There are definitely trends. 100%. Like when I was playing when my career started, it was a running the ball trend, and it was more conservative because the quote that they would use was, when you throw the ball, three things can happen, and two of them are bad. Yeah, right. And now it's the
Everybody,
opposite. Now everyone's throwing the ball, and that does dictate the even the nature of the players. When everyone was running the ball, you wanted the big fat guys, and you said feed them more and more and more. Now everyone is throwing and doing no huddle all the time, and so you need guys to be in better shape. And so it is, and they're not running the ball, so you need guys that are maybe a little bit smaller, more athletic. So it does shape the culture of the game and the types of players who star, and even to a certain extent, the type of players who become interested in the game.
Yeah, I wonder
yeah,
how AI is going to affect football. Sorry.
and it would seem like, then there's like the overall evolution of a game, like basketball and football, and then the players that are playing it, basketball is like you have these tall people that can play every position and it's 5 out motion and the centers can shoot threes and that's never
Yeah,
going to go away. But the 2-pointer, in the key is still reliable in the playoffs. Same like running the ball in football. Like that's not
the
going to go
playoffs.
away.
Yeah, yeah.
But the game is permanently changed, and then there's these little waves in between it, of how it's played year to year.
And usually, like I think, like most of these changes, they're precipitated by an individual, or in football, it might be an offense or a player, but it's usually a group comes together and does something special that's and they're trailblazers and they say NFL is a copycat league. If one team in one season does something really well, like in 2007, 2008, we ran the Wildcat in Miami, and it's this new formation. It's an old formation, and we had so much success that the next year all the teams had some kind of Wildcat package, and it even showed up in video games in Madden.
Interesting. So that zeitgeist does affect it. And if you have players with all the same Saturns or all the same, if the same college level group graduates into the NFL and they have the same Saturns, they're going to have a certain build and the same, so I do think the build of players will change and that will change how the game is played. And like you said, like having certain star athletes that change the culture of it. And I think it could be that there are some artistic athletes like, and I love that you say that your celebrity or fame is part of your artistry because that is what I think is artistic about you is your whole story. Like just the Ricky Williams story is super cool. And so I think that storyline can affect the game, and that is the art layer. Um, wait, can I give you guys one?
I don't know. I think certain storylines, eh, mildly, I think certain storylines can affect the game. I think how I've affected the game over a long period of time is that players are given more permission to be themselves. And that's not just me. I mean, it's a trend, but I can say that I was an example of that. Because for a long time, it was like the player on the team that smoked or the one the coach tried to run off. And so it was very rare to see the best player on the team smoke. And I just happened to, find myself in that situation where I was already the best player in the team and I was going through something, and the only thing that helped me feel better was smoking. And I tried to hide it, but then I got in trouble. And it became public, and I still had a job. I still got a statue. I still got a stadium named after me. So it's like and for me, the art form for me was life as an art form,
Right.
and I
That's
think
it.
it was easier for me to do that because my so much of my life was as a athletic entertainer. So I could appreciate. I was around it enough to be able to appreciate that. That's the way I can express myself. Is how the choices I make on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's like the root of art is to act or create something with intent to relay a message, and that has concept behind it. And you can take a painting or you can approach life as art. And that's what I do. And like I think about everything I do and how it affects people, and I am trying to affect the greater good. And I saw that in you as a football player and as a person that redefines how now other football players are treated. Like Dennis Rodman did the same thing. Now he was slightly more extreme, but it
Yeah,
also took a coach to allow him to be himself because he realized the greatness in that. Dennis Rodman was a better basketball player if he was unmuted. And that also really affected how athletes are treated today. And, there's a problem athlete, there's a problem, you know, teammate, but then there's just letting somebody be who they are, and that makes them better at their job. And I think people like you pave the way, and that is really cool to watch.
yeah. The irony and synchronicity of this conversation is I was just with Dennis this past weekend, and
What?
we were in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it was a small autograph show. And I was sitting there, and I get paid a decent amount of money to write my name. I write my name, and it's true. I write my name, and then I'll write smoke weed every day on football helmets. And people people pay me like almost $30 every time I do that. And a funny story also, William Shatner was there, and he's 95. And after just being around for a couple of minutes, I was like, if I'm like that when I'm 95, goodness gracious, right? That's a win. I mean, he was bossing people around and yelling at people. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. But the fact that if I was just a football player, I might not have these type of opportunities where I haven't played in 15 years and people are still interested. And the line for Dennis in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina was around the building, you know? And yeah, he was a great rebounder, but I think the way he lived his life as an art form really inspired a lot of people.
Yes.
Definitely. And it might have been perceived as just reckless at the time, but it was more than that, and it was with thought and purpose as far as I see it.
It inspired me for sure. There's no doubt about that.
Well, man, I'm gonna call it the Dennis Rodman effect, where you just act. Well, because I'm like the rock and roll astrologers, always getting in trouble, and like now I'm fighting with Chris Brennan again. I'm just like always rocking and rolling. But maybe someday it'll pay off, is what I'm saying.
There
My
you go.
signatures are worth 30 cents right now.
But I have
I'm
to, I mean, if I don't write, I smoke weed every day, then they're only worth $17. Guys.
Oh, well, geez, that
Like
$13 will
cents,
chill you out.
cents per letter.
Well, hey, Groshon, I had another question, but I'm not going to ask it because we could go on and on. It was so good to have you in the room with Ricky. Of all the people that we've had on this show, for some reason, I was like, you would really.
I've been looking forward to it for a while, and I enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope to do it again and meet
Yeah,
you
this was awesome.
someday. Yeah,
Yeah.
This was awesome.
So,
cross
hey,
paths.
Groshon, where can people find you? I want you to DJ my wedding on February 28th, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, on Instagram, it's at Silent Grosh. I think that's the best spot. And I'm working on my online presence. It's weak because I need somebody to do it for me, and I've been doing too much for the collective. But at Silent Grosh on Instagram is where you can find me. That's the best spot for now. And then everything else will like spur off from there. Or at New Habitat, but that's my collective, but I prefer at Silent Grosh.
Okay, we'll email those and then I'll put them in the link.
But
Yeah. I'm glad you were not so silent, Grosh, today because you said a lot of good stuff.
now that's the irony there.
When I become a billionaire, the thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pimp out artists. And
That's
yeah, I mean, I'm going to commission
okay.
so many. I'm going to commission like millions of dollars of astrological works.
Do it.
Dude, that's what I do now. I'm pimping out Ricky right now.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of, I'll see you next week. All right.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.